Welcome to a How to Handicap video. We're going to be discussing how to handicap big trades in the NBA. Okay, Marco, so this is topical. We got the Knicks and the Nuggets have made a big trade. And actually, the Nuggets play tonight, Knicks play tomorrow. And I actually wrote a blog article on this at pregameblogs.com. And I applied many of your concepts to this kind of disruption. To me, it's analogous in many ways to an injured player, which is usually where you talk about this. But let's get you to brain dump on us. How are you going to be looking at the Knicks? How are you going to be looking at the Nuggets?
Well, first off, let's go to the focus, and the focus is the Knicks. They're getting, the star player, Carmelo Anthony, and this is a situation that they're going to be overvalued. Everybody's going, oh, okay, we got the star coming in, and, the line is going to be up on them. You got to understand that they're doing this mid-season. You've got to have chemistry. And if you remember, even after an entire, preseason, when the Miami Heat started the season, you can't emulate, game speed in practice and get that chemistry
Plus,
down.
during the NBA season, there's very few chances to practice. That's a point that the NBA insiders really stress, is if you get a rare chance where there is 4 days, sometimes you'll get a team with 4 days between games, they usually play so well that next game. It's not just because of the rest, but it's because they actually have time to prep and put in sets or whatever. So really, the Knicks won't have many days of practice in the next month.
Absolutely not. And, it's going to be, since they are a marquee team to start with, not because they're a good team, but because they're a New York team.
Exactly.
They're going to have that heat factor, and everybody's going to want to jump on them. And I really, I'm going to find spots to go against them in the next, couple weeks.
I think it's going to be the perfect storm because, one, you've got the whole disruptive chemistry factor, which I think is massive. You've got the Knicks being a marquee team to start with. Then you've got the fact that Melo is a sexy type player, and that's a term I've been using more and more. People they like offense. They don't, the Spurs, people are less excited about the Spurs than they are the Knicks, which makes no sense, but it shows you what people like. So when you have all three of those things, it's a perfect storm of overvaluation.
I agree with you 100%, and this will be, and I'll take it a step further, because you're not going to have the chemistry with them, to be able to cover these spreads. And the Knicks, because of the coach, they're a running team to begin with, so their totals are high to start with. But you're going to see the totals continue to be high because it's also going to affect them defensively. You're not going to, again, chemistry works on both ends.
And this isn't just one player. I mean, they swapped a bunch of players both ways.
So you don't, pick and rolls are going to be more effective because, guys aren't, going to know how, to react with each other and learn, I'm supposed to go here and you're supposed to go there. So I think my tip on the Knicks for the next, I would say at least a good 10 games, be looking to fade the Knicks. And if I'm going to play a total, I'm going to be leaning to the over.
The over. See, now I disagree with that because you made a good point, and in my blog I didn't touch on this, is that not only is there going to be a chemistry issue within the new players, which is not just one star guy, but multiple new players. You also got a very different system. This is almost like a quirky offense in college football, the run and shoot or the option, triple option, whatever. It's going to take these players a while to get used to, forget the plays, but just the way they're playing, the up and down, the cardiovascular fitness. So to me, I think it's going to be a bigger this might be the biggest transition in the history, in the last 10 years of the NBA that happened mid-season.
I agree with you on the side of the ball offensively for the Knicks, but defensively they're going to be a wreck for two reasons.
So you're saying they're going to score poorly and they're going to defend poorly. So it seems like the value's on the fade more than the total.
More than the total. But if I'm looking for spots to play, I'm not going to want to play any unders with them.
All right. Now, let's continue with the Knicks, because after the midterm, let's call it 10, 15 games, typically, in your theory, there's just when the public gets disenchanted and frustrated at the bad ATS results is when the team starts to gel, either injured player or whatever is causing the disruption, and that's usually the time to go the other way. There's this middle time where you pass, and then eventually the curves go in a certain direction that now there's value playing on them.
Yeah, it's a pendulum that swings back and forth, and it gets to a point that it goes so far the other way because everybody keeps continuing to lose with them. And the perfect example is again, just go back to the Miami Heat this year and look at the way they started the season, and then look when they started to win, and then they kept winning and they kept covering because it took a while for Vegas to get the adjustment right.
But my point is that I think with the Knicks, the pendulum is only going to swing to neutrality, where I'm going to be not inclined to fade or play on. And I think that's because of the two other factors other than the chemistry, which is, again, the New York being such a marquee team in general, and the very fact that the sexiness of Carmelo and the rest of that team at this point. So I think that the pendulum stops, that it's going to be fade less often, and then eventually neutral, and maybe occasionally play on. But I don't think they're going to be a play on at any point.
I will agree with you there because
unless if they go 2-13, there might be an overreaction.
You know, making the one difference, and you make a good point, the difference where I gave the example to the Heat is the Heat started so high the other way because of the three stars from the trade at the beginning of the season, that they were so far one side that, you know, they couldn't move it back far enough to get the value, you know, took the value away from them, where the Knicks aren't starting that far off of center. So I agree with you that when it comes back, it'll land in the middle.
Let's talk about the Nuggets, because usually people overreact to the fact that, hey, their team's been gutted, they've given up. So, typically I would think, just like an injured player where the player is removed, you would think, oh, let's play on. I don't think so. I think, again, this massive historic amount of disruption mid-year is going to cause them to be very lowly or very valued in a very low way, but I think it's going to be justified.
I agree with you on this instance. In most instances, and I want to say it, look to the Cleveland Cavaliers at the beginning of the season. Everybody, the expectations were so bad on them, and it's lived up as the season went on. But if you remember the first week or 2 weeks of the season, they actually at one point had the same record as the Miami Heat. They started the season, they were covering some games.
I'm saying if a team is treated or considered too low, then I think in general you have value playing on them. Right. I just think here's the case where it might be for different reasons that they're being lowly valued because they've been gutted by the public. That's why they value it. But I think the lack of chemistry on these new players is going to be the key for the next 15 games.
I agree with you. But like you said, in a normal instance, if it's only the star player that got taken away, there's value in taking those teams.
To me, there's going to be massive value on the Nets 15 game, or the Nuggets 15 games out, because what's going to happen is they are likely going to underperform or perform really low, and then all of a sudden they're going to start gelling, and if you find that point where they start gelling, you're going to have 10 games of really good value, I think.
It takes a long time once a team bottoms out before Vegas brings them back to where they're supposed to be, because the public, they've got long memories.
So let me throw something at you here. I actually, in my blog, mentioned I think there's going to be some slight value on the Nets, because there's a perception the Nets have come out as the loser in this. Mm-hmm. But my question is, they've got the same team now they had yesterday. Mm-hmm. So my point is, if there is a devaluation of the Nets, the only justifiable reason would be if psychologically the team feels disappointed that hey, we stink and we haven't, the savior didn't come, then maybe there'll be an underperformance. But in general, I think there's going to be a slight downward adjustment that's unjustified. What do you think?
That's a good point. Mentally, that's what the public's going to think. And as you said, nothing has changed on.
So the question is, are the players going to think that they lost out on something and then not play as hard? And I think 1 or 2 games of watching them, if they overperform in the next game or two, I think you might have real value for a couple more games after that.
And I can't wait for the first time the Knicks and the Nets play. That ought to be interesting.
Yeah, awesome. Any closing thoughts?
Nope.
All right, so we talked about some concepts here which are very applicable to this situation, but they're also applicable to any situation where there's a major disruption in a team, and the way that the public in Vegas looks at it, and then the way that situation evolves over the course of the midterm. So we'll be back, and actually, remember, you can get all of our videos at pregame.tv.